Showdown lore book regarding some of the infected and enemies in the world. First, we have the Grunt. Researchers' insight into the Grunt, undated. It is quite difficult to perform any typological analysis of this Louisiana incident. I'm starting to think these events may have been the beginning of the zombie stories we have today. It certainly matches a pattern. Some kind of deadly infection hits the settlement, almost wipes out the whole population, and then the dead rise from their graves in order to feast on the living. Though this is only zombie stories I've heard, where the zombies take up weapons, torches, and blades in most cases, to wield against the living. The old adage holds, truth is always far stranger than fiction. It seems like the hunters of this era were simply calling them grunts. There are conflicting reports, of course, but the material I have found so far appears to be talking about what's probably a slow-moving and mostly human creature, possibly the victim of a viral infection or controlled by some kind of greater spirit or Loa. While at times I seem to be grasping at straws to identify some of the more specialized monsters in the source text. Grunts are ubiquitous, to say the least. Of particular value, an autopsy performed and recovered almost in full from the journal of Dr. Reinhard Winkler that I've included in the archive. According to the reports, you could dispatch a grunt quickly with a well-placed headshot. I still wouldn't want to meet one in the dark, and certainly not in numbers. Journal of Dr. Reinhard Winkler, transcribed from original typewritten 8.5 by 11, 1 out of 5. Tuesday, May 7th, 1895. It took Father Nico and his children 6 hours to draw the wards. In the end, he fell asleep, exhausted from his ordeal. Only 2 of the boys died this time. The rain did not help. Yes, it's a bit rainy today. I never liked rain. It underlines the smell of urine. It just feels wrong, unhygienic. It washed away the clean, allowing the dirt to prevail. Can smell the rain today though. The stench in the laboratory is still unbearable. This is certainly not decomposition. Decomposition is natural. Nasty, but natural. After all, just as Carnot postulates, everything rots, doesn't it? Everything dies. No, this is something darker, something deeper, perhaps. Something unnatural, and as wrong as the smell of dog piss after rain, not the smell of death. It's the smell of life, which should not be. Journal of Dr. Reinhard Winkler, transcribed from original typewritten 8.5 by 11, 2 out of 5, Wednesday, May 8th, 1895. It stopped twitching at dawn. Not sure if it's dead. Not sure if the word even applies. The creature has the appearance of a perfectly normal, if decomposed human being. Yet inside, I suspect there's some kind of darkness, a hint of something, dare I say, satanic. Father Nico broke the silence, assuring me that the darkness is unable to breach the wards now, rendering this specimen inert. Apparent cause of death: multiple bullet wounds in the cranium, I'd say, under, under normal circumstances. If I can ignore its missing larynx, its throat looks chewed off, fang marks of a beast of some sort, something we haven't seen so far. I have difficulty finding a suitable classification for this specimen. Philippa calls them zombie, an older Haitian word for human beings controlled via magic. Although fairly accurate, I believe it's too narrow of a definition. The wards may be doing little more than securing Father Nico's peace of mind. Truth be told, I have more faith in bullets having rendered this thing inert than his ritual. But Black's notes refer to them as a vessel, an empty receptacle for whichever spirit decides to invade, or perhaps just a vessel for the plague. This too feels accurate so far. Need to investigate more. Journal of Dr. Reinhard Winkler, transcribed from original typewritten 8.5 by 11. 3 out of 5. Sunday, May 12, 1895. Can it be just 4 days since my last entry? So much lost in such a short space of time. I'm coming around to Father Nico's interpretation of this thing. There's a comfort in faith, believing again. Dissection still proving to be difficult. Tissue collapses and disintegrates under the scalpel. With great difficulty, I manage to reach the vital organs. It looks fascinating, to say the least. There's no significant anatomical changes as far as I can tell. It is very likely these things are still fundamentally human. Torn muscle, fiber all around, suggests resistance to motor. There was a brown stain here. His writing gets progressively worse, as if the body itself is controlled by some invisible consciousness against its will. Against its will has been struck through once. It's just a theory, but maybe this thing also has been crossed out. Person is still alive inside. Despite the state of decomposition, I believe there may be an actual person trapped in this body. If this indeed is the case, it must feel like a person, like a personal hell. Witnessing yourself as a monster. Of course, if that's the case, the obvious question is what is controlling these grunts? Perhaps the belief that there is something controlling these people is just giving me comfort, that there is meaning behind all this death, or that there is indeed something greater. Journal of Dr. Reinhard Winkler, transcribed from original typewritten 8.5 by 11. 4 out of 5. Monday, May 13th, 1895. Sun's up. The stench is unbearable. Lots of flies. Laboratory surrounded by no less than 10 other grunts. They keep hurling themselves against the walls. I signaled William. Hope he makes it in time. Father Nico and the children are doing what they can. Opened the ribcage today. Saw it was buzzing. Buzzing is again crossed out. Moving. All the internal organs, with the curious exception of the heart, seem to be at least structurally intact. Something wrong with the heart seems deformed. The form is scribbled through, spherically in form, pulsing, but not pumpkin, pumping for lack of a better term. Even in death, it keeps on pulsing in a dark, sticky fluid. I had to check the wards to see if they're intact. Fearing that dark presence is making it move again, but no. It's just some kind of primal reflex. Leads me to think it's still alive. Or dead. I postulate that the fluid inside the heart itself may be causing the disease, or vice versa. Too tired, need sleep, need to focus, need more time. Journal from Dr. Reinhard Winkler, transcribed from original, typewritten, 8.5 by 11. Tuesday, May 14th, 1895. A breakthrough. It turns out that the heart is more of a nest. Father Nico has been too embattled to share my delight in the discovery. It seems that the loss of the little ones has worn his resolve. If only I could get inside his head, direct him to the matter at hand. The heart seems to be pumping some sort of nutritional fluid into the veins, which in return houses tiny larvae. Is it pump? Is it pumping insects? Need samples? Something else I haven't caught before. The circulatory system now seems venated, like the wings of a horse fly. I'm quite sure this was not the case before. This specimen appears to be changing, evolving. How did I miss its changes? All the venation and there's no blood. Is the black liquid its blood? For what purpose? I don't know. It whispers, has been scratched out furiously. I'm exhausted, eyes burning, head buzzing. Where in the nine hells is William? And now the specimen seems to have developed a new post-mortem reflex, semi-regular spasms. It is as if the chest cavity is going to explode. The grunts are almost in. And that's the last entry by Dr. Reinhard Winkler regarding the infected grunt. Next, we have the armored. Researchers' insight into the armored, undated. I've used the works of Scagnamiglio himself to illustrate the comprehensive analysis of the armored. A rare pleasure, as so few survived. A more physical analysis is available from Harold Black. It follows. The armored, its name has proven remarkably ambiguous. Some invoke a defensive figure, one that is willing to slip back into its shell. And that cannot be further from the apparent truth, as many accounts suggest the opposite. A creature well protected, enabled to go on dangerous offensives. A shock troop with more mobility and soul flexibility than the gigantic meathead. To paraphrase George Washington, offensive operations are the surest means of defense. So this specimen is seemingly equipped to relentless pursuit of its target. Protected from their retaliatory fire. One account cites it intelligent enough to smash their doors, though this cannot be verified. So what is the armor protecting? A fool would think itself, no, again and again, These enemies are encountered in proximity to rifts, those apparently vulnerable, or important locations to the beast. They lurk behind doors, linger on doorstops, all potential choke points, all vital locations to control. The hunter's name for it was pragmatic. They did not dabble into occultism to explain it. While it's as certain these creatures existed, as certain as the grunts at least, its taxonomy is indeterminate. Some think of it as little more than an armored grunt, some mutation having thickened the skin and developed a chitinous exoskeleton. I would defer on this point. It's frequently noted that the armored's husk is particularly flammable and was vulnerable to all manner of incendiary devices. Others, who perhaps align more closely with my own beliefs, think of it as something distinct in its own right, that such a mutation must have more significant purpose. Dr. Servus Diaboli, author Tamat Scagnomiglio, manuscript, translated from Voynich bleached leather binding, 11 inches by 17, 1 out of 2. The armored, named for their inhuman chitin, flesh dried, hardened, a hollowed husk of hope. A knight errant arrived dead on his horse. The Lord of Pestilence has tripled the walls of this of the guardsmen. Now the cursed roam the 9 circles free. Hell has been harrowed a second time. But the saved souls are not deserved to rise to heaven, to earth instead, to sanctify our hallowed ground with their satanic sentiments. I've written thus, far of the miser, grunts and gluten meathead, fitting analogies for beyond the walls of this is the refuge of the truly penitent sinners of malice. A legend from my childhood, a Diptera wandering the desert is visited upon my tempestuous Merid, undeterred by the swirling smoke and sands, for he knows that it will pass, he staggers on. The noxious winds rise to a tempestuous whirlwind. The man walks on, even as the skin is shorn from his bones. He arrives at a camp. The travelers recoil in shock. He is now clogged in light. He rests at the fire and counts his tale. At sunup, he finishes abruptly, for he has turned to stone. The legend is true across the world, even here. There's an old tale of a fisherman who sails deep into the Gulf to catch a great fish. He fights it for 3 days, until it comes close enough to spear. On the journey home, sharks eat the fish. The exhausted man returns with the bones, which are large enough to impress the other fishermen. He has nothing but glory. Stubborn, resolute in the face of death, vainglorious in his onset. These are the traits that raise men and women to great feats, then doom them. These are the few virtues and sins of those who are made armored. Indomitable will that in death catalyzes their petrification. A curse and a blessing, for the hardened chitin is at the mercy of our own hellfire. A spark of ignition enough to set it ablaze and burn the will out from within. Clippings from the New Orleans True Crescent. Authors unknown. Newsprint. Variable sizes. August 24th, 1858. A tough yarn. Frederick Licton returned from the Yukon with a strange tale of an unfortunate friend. This companion, Ernest Spiegler, had found some geodes, masses of quartz, while prospecting. In one such mass, there was a cavity lined with crystals containing fluid called the water of crystallization. Spiegler, with a jesting remark, drank the fluid, and soon after complained of a weight and pain in stomach and bowels. He soon died, his body instantly rigid, and in a few hours, petrification took place. The whole body, flesh, blood, heart, liver, etc., becoming solid. April 16th, 1893. Wanton combustion. The unfortunate but nonetheless remarkable story came to us of the poor fate of a man at one country sawmill. Having had a mishap using an animal fat to clean up sawdust, he made merry with friends, heartened by his bizarre visage. As she is wanted to do, tragedy struck suddenly when he caught the spark of an oil lamp and caught a light immediately. March 27, 1895. Petrification by artificial means. Charles D. and Frank T. Boyds of Lafayette think they have discovered a method of turning human bodies into stone, preserving them forever. In the basement of their establishment on Cottage Grove Avenue is the body of a young man who died July 18th last. The body was treated and turned to a substance resembling stone. All of the blood was withdrawn from the fluid injected. After 2 weeks, there was no trace of decomposition, and the flesh began to harden. Strange growths resembling that of papery wasp nest still puzzled the man, who declared that not long more is needed to perfect the fluid. The Servus Diaboli, author Tamrat Scagnomiglio, manuscript translated from Voynich bleached leather binding, 11 inches by 17 inches, 2 out of 2. Tales akin to the Armoreds and consequent are rare, yet petrification innumerable, spanning cultures separated by centenaries and continents. Treating these allegorically, we are first familiar with Greek mythology, the prototypical Medusa, curse of various gods, and the ship of the Phaeacians. They occur across Catholic hagiography, from the miracles of Saint Hilda to the shepherd punished by God after betraying Saint Barbara. Giants caught by the break of day recur throughout Germanic legends as often as lone men turn to stone. Pillars do, Slavic ones. I know of Oriental stories from French, Indochina, and Japan featuring ill-fated valiant errands. For stories originating from our own continent, I know too. There's a hill in North Carolina where Cherokee Lookout was punished for cowardice. And there are the more recent Apache Tears, where 75 Apache riders facing defeat in battle rode their horses off cliffs rather than be captured. Their wives' tears turned to stone upon hitting the ground. But these stories explain geological phenomena, irrelevant things to the field of geology. We are able, for instance, to explain phenomena like the stone wood in Mississippi. But these fall flat here. Hunters return with stories of hard men, which bullets ricocheted off. Yet clearly their substance is that of a hardened wood pulp, layered thick and robust. There are medical legends of a tree man syndrome turning flesh to bark, but this too seems inappropriate. At an apparent dead end, I wrote two others I knew to have a background in science. At an apparent dead end, I wrote to two others I knew to have a background in science. Dr. Reinhard Winkler and Harold Black. Dr. Winkler was preparing to embark on an investigation into the anatomy of the basic grunt and was unable to assist me. Mr. Black agreed, and I am indebted to him for his physical analysis. A friend of mine, from when I rode with the sinners, came to me with an opportunity. Armed with no more than a sword, he had hacked at an armored to no avail. When he thrust the blade, he was able to stab clean through an armor plate bullet-free. The Journal of Harold Black, undated, black leather bound, handwritten, 6 by 8.25, 1 out of 2. When I arrived at the laboratory, the Turk was leaving. Tamara met me and led me through the yard, showing a carriage full of waspish armored plates. Tamara was younger than I imagined, his writing having a quality heavy with the weight of years. Swiftly picked apart what little he knew of natural science. First, physical tests. These seemed a novelty to Tamrat. Smaller caliber bullets seemed unable to penetrate the thickest pieces. The impact absorbed. Larger calibers were able to punch through. To test the degree to which the power diminished, we armored a dead swine. The first two shots found the bad angle and glanced off. However, the third pierced and then went deep into the pig. Visually, the plates were similar to paper, akin to the large cocoons found in Healing Waters Church. Their composition far dissimilar. The material somewhat similar to chitin, commonly found in exoskeletons of crustaceans and insects, and scales of fish and amphibians. On a microscopic level, these are fibers, like whiskers, that fuse at the end and form into a dense mat. Impossible to determine if they are naturally human or not. The day after, we awoke to find the armored gone, or rather, disintegrated. Covering the laboratory was a layer of dust. One closer examination, we found tiny black maggots crawling among the granules, writhing and feeding. We torched the house and rode from Algiers before the crime was discovered. Tamara was forlorn at the loss of his library, and we parted ways at the docks. We had learned a vital lesson: never bring anything back into the city. I have read enough legends myself to know not to steal fire from the gods. The Journal of Harold Black, undated, black leather bound, handwritten, 6 by 8.25, 2 out of 2. At a brief encounter with Dr. Winkler before he departed, he stated the investigation was fruitless. The armored was little more than a grunt with an exoskeleton. I would have to find a live specimen. Their behavior was fortunately predictable, as their tough exteriors testifies. They're, they're used primarily as protectors. I need several bloodshed I need several blooded hunters to assist me, but I lack the funds, and Tamard was drinking away the loss of his books. Isabella agreed to my terms, a conduit. I was confident her attunement could lead us to a virulent rift. Isabella curiously rejected the notion that she was a seer. She had troubles enough being typified as a mystic or practitioner of voodoo. Few contracts were offered to a black woman, suffering the worst of both discrimination, so she was the least affordable. We found an armored quickly, however, we were unable to control it. A shotgun blast dismembered his lower body, slowing it down. Prime for a clean kill. However, the arrival of other hunters forced us to abandon it. Isabella found and drew a second into a bear trap. Immobilized, she was able to precisely hit its cranium, dispatching it in a single shot. The specimen was fresh, but our time limited. In the 40 minutes we spent there, it's a sure death to spend more than an hour in the hunting grounds. I noted that the chain plate seemed to grow, some 2 inches, even after death. Deep in the chest cavity, a disturbing anomaly, a third arm, slender and sinewy, sprouting what could only be described as fangs. It was crooked and underdeveloped, though an incision showed thick with muscle. Could it be growing, emerging to give the armor some new ability? Or was it evidence of something lost a long way? An underutilized specialization. Dr. Winkler's thesis proved false. Okay, so far we've read the Grunt and the Armored. I have 3 more that are completed, 4 more. The Hive, the Immolator, the Hellhound, and the Water Devil. If you enjoy this type of content, let me know in the comments. Hit the thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe as well, as I plan on doing more of these for this game and other games out there. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and enjoy. Bye.